in Preston. You know, the new Pendle policing base will be a facility of over £20 million, so it's great to be able to use the spending power to support local businesses and businesses in the community, and Pendle again is an example of that. Social value is something that we have in every contract with Lancashire Constabulary, and of course where we can, local businesses and ethical kind of procurement are really part of what we're trying to achieve. Another one I think which needs a little bit more context is the operational limits, where it mentions about a 24% increase. This is one where kind of statistics can be a little bit misleading, because whilst there is a stark figure there, and that by itself is very concerning, part of the reason for that is that we did manage through the office to get an additional 93,000 of funding for the Up Limit campaign this year, and that money was used in particularly to upgrade in new technology for drug testing and more sophisticated, and a significant number of the people that tested positive for drink and drug driving was on the drug testing that we did. Now, in the past, they wouldn't have been tested, let alone would have tested positive, so that is actually a real positive in some ways, that we are ensuring that Lancashire's roads are kept safe through improved technology. And another one that I just wanted to mention, number 9 there, when it mentions about the protection of stalking victims. This was part of the crime and policing bill that was tabled last week. This is a monumental piece of legislation. Over 330 pages, lots of legislation coming through to support the government's mission on safer streets and ensuring that we can deliver what the government are saying is one of their key priorities. The stalking is one element of it, but there is a raft of legislation within that one bill. It could have been broken up into 4 or 5 separate bills. There is so much in it. And so I think it's good news. It will give new powers, but like always, Chair, it's important when the government have good ideas that it's backed up with the resources to enable us to deliver. So it's a good news story. Stalking is just one element of that. It's key in part of the police and crime plan, as is most of what is contained within the crime and policing bill. Other than that, like I said, there are lots of performance headlines there, and I'm happy to take questions on any one of them, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, we've got a first question, Councillor Whip.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask a first question? Clive, you've referred to the operating base in Pendle, and drive past it on my way to this meeting, and the mast is up and the steel workers that have been referred to is there. What will happen to the existing base in Colne when the Pendle base opens in Nelson, and what will happen to the neighbourhood policing teams, given that previously we've had neighbourhood policing teams actually signing on, getting briefed in the areas that they work in. The advent of the Pendle base will result in all the neighbourhood teams getting briefed at Nelson, which might be 20-25 minutes away from where they actually work, meaning that there's perhaps up to an hour out of the day, which will be not policing but travelling. And if, Chairman, I could go on to other matters. I looked at this report, which was quite thin, and I was looking for detail of performance and, you know, how well we were doing answering the phone, responding to emergencies and the like. And I eagerly clicked on the link to the accountability board, and I was sorely disappointed because there is absolutely no information there whatsoever. And I find that there's a decision to exempt public and press, that after that decision is taken, there's discussion about the force control room, 999 calls, 101 calls, time to arrive data, none of which is visible or available to either ourselves as a police and crime panel or members of the public. I then see that His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary report on the recommendations from that are discussed in private, and that there's a general item, current and significant issues, which again is all secret. On the website, there's a button that you can press and it says transparency, and supposedly this is the transparency of the Commissioner, the transparency of the office, but there is no transparency, there's no detail, there's no information, and how on earth this police and crime panel can properly scrutinise your actions in challenging the Chief Constable, I do not know. I note, Chair, that paragraph 4 here says that future accountability board meetings, a detailed performance pack will be provided to the Commissioner. Now, I recall that we had, going back several years, we had all this information. We were able to challenge ourselves. None of this is available now. And does the Police and Crime Commissioner think that this is a satisfactory state of affairs when it seems that the policing service in this county is becoming a secret service rather than one that is open and transparent and open to challenge? And if we can't do that challenge, who on earth can?
Thank you, Councillor Whip. Commissioner, if you want to come back on the first point around the move of the from Colne to Pendle, and then I think we may need to have a wider discussion around how this panel wants to be briefed and whether there needs to be more information. But over to you, Commissioner.
Okay. Well, on the first one, in terms of the Pendle Police Station, and the specific question was around the future of Colne. Specifically, a decision has not been taken yet around the future of that station. However, as Pendle will become the policing base for policing within Pendle, that it is very likely in the fullness of time, when it's fully operational, that is where the neighbourhood policing teams will receive the daily briefing. The location has been picked because it is ideal for accessibility to get across East Lancashire, based next to the M65 motorway. I don't think it'll take 25 minutes from there to get into Colne. But again, it's a decision that's working with the constabulary for the future needs for policing within Pendle and within the east of Lancashire. I think it is probably an ideal base to have that. You know, significant investment is going in to that building, which, given that we've also got a new build in Chorley, that I think that's demonstrating the commitment that we have to making sure that we have the right facilities for policing within Lancashire in the right locations where they can deliver the services for the public. Policing moves on, and the requirements for policing and physically where they work, that moves on as well. And sometimes in terms of keeping some of the buildings that have built in whatever times in the past, you know, the cost of maintaining them and keeping them going becomes cost prohibitive. And so that's why these decisions have to be taken. So there's no decision yet been taken about the future of Colne, but I would expect once Pendle is fully functional, that will be where policing will be delivered from.
And then just on the second point, yeah.
Do you comment on that now?
Yeah, because there's 2 points, one from Councillor Whip. Is there any specific area of information that you're pointing to, or are you just raising the issue around you want to see more detail and reports?
Well, Chairman, there is a complete absence of any information, so we don't know what's happening with 101 calls, 999 calls, time to arrive. So it's very difficult to ask any questions because it just isn't there.
No, I understand. So, Commissioner, is there a way that you'd propose to get that information to panel members in a different way, or maybe comes to this meeting?
Chair, this is in some way, because to be fair to Councillor Whip, I agree. You know, and I agree that that is information that should be publicly available, and we have requested that that information is put into part 1 in the future within the Accountability Board's meeting. This is a legacy issue for the meetings that we are having with constabulary, because that is the way that these meetings have been conducted in the past. So I'm assuming that these questions that are being asked of me was asked of the previous Commissioner, because the reason why these are being dealt with in part 2 is because that is the way that they have got used to dealing with them. It's not the way that I want to work. It's not the way that I've worked in the past. And clearly we want to make sure that items that are relevant for the public, not just this meeting here today, Chair, are part 1 items that you can see the detail of, and you can judge the performance of yourselves and whether we are delivering what we should be. I don't think we've got anything to hide within Lancashire. Certainly within the meetings that I have had in the Accountability Board, really positive. You know, the HMIC inspection of Lancashire was a really good inspection. So the areas on which we will focus will be to make sure that where we need to make improvements, we do. And, you know, I don't think there's anything that we need to hide. And we have requested that the vast majority of that meeting is part 1, available to the public and available to this panel to see in the future. Like I said, we're asking for the reports to come sooner to us so that we can see the reports, and then we can then discuss them at the Accountability Board, and you can see documents like we can see them.
Thank you. I think the issue that might be being raised is that we haven't, I think previously we will have seen some of the breakdown of the data around call waiting times and call response and so on, but I'll let Councillor Bradley come in next.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit puzzled by the Commissioner's response. Under the last Commissioner, we got lots of information. We got packs that were quite thick with information, so I don't see what's changed since then. I think I also pointed out to the previous meeting since you were appointed, Commissioner, that we would like to see that information. We were assured that there was teething problems with your office being set up and awaiting staff, etc. I know there's a new Chief Executive who's not here today that's in the office, but is it a problem with getting information through your office, or is it a problem with getting information out of the police? And I'll reserve the right to come back to you and follow up if that's okay.
Chair, I think I think Ian can probably give you
Yeah, Commissioner and Chair. You're right. Historically, we so in the last administration, we provided information. There was a lot of work behind that. We had to sanitise a lot of that information because of the way it came through from the constabulary. This is a national problem. It's not a local problem. A lot of other OPCs are having the same issues with the forces around releasing data. What we're doing, obviously the Commissioner approved his plan in December. We as a team now have gone through the plan. We are drafting up a delivery plan and we can bring that to this meeting. That plan will identify all the actions that we believe needs to be undertaken to achieve the commitments within this plan, the partners who are going to help deliver that, the bits that we're going to deliver, the bits that the constabulary are going to deliver. And behind that, we've got a meeting, I think, in the next week or so, with the Deputy Chief Constable as to around what is the data that they are now going to produce to demonstrate the progress against that. So, as of the next meeting, Chair, you will have a full schedule of data. I think we have to realise as well that a lot of the data that we presented was data and information relating to the last police and crime plan and not this police and crime plan as well. So we are doing a lot of work behind the scenes, and our intention is that we will present to you an outline of the delivery plan and all the supporting data for you to have a look at.
Thank you. I think it is just a case of either these reports that are currently behind closed doors can either be shared with us, or there needs to be a mechanism to get that data to us, anonymised or whatever way it needs to be done, to ensure that the police can still do their duty without, undermining it. But I think panel members, and particularly as councillors, were quite used to sort of QPIs for scrutiny committees and call waiting times. As is kind of a key one that we're all used to customer service with our own councils. That it might not be strictly our responsibility to scrutinise that, but it's our responsibility to scrutinise the Commissioner's scrutiny. Yeah. Have you got something before I go back?
Oh, yeah, we can look at that. I mean, even data that went in as part 2 through time becomes part 1 because it's out of date. So we can go through that and refresh all that as well for you.
Just to follow up, Chair, I'm going to come back on another point later. So what you're saying is it's been hard work, a lot of work involved in doing it, so we stopped doing it. That appears to be what you're saying. So we've stopped, and it's measurement against a plan. It's not. It's a measurement of some of the force's core measures and core outputs, which is what, in my understanding, the Commissioner should have been holding the Chief Constable to account of for the last number of months. The Chief Constable stood in that corner over there and went through a lot of those numbers just before Christmas. So it's not like it's a secret. So it's there because she told us half of it. What I'm concerned about is we're supposed to be here to check that's happening. We can't because you think it's too much hard work, or somebody does, to do that. And the other thing is, the other point to make is, we're quite capable in this committee, as I understand it, of going into part 2 papers, and papers being released through part 2, with questions being asked irrelevant to part 1, and if needs be, to move into private session. So again, we're all experienced at doing that. That's no reason for withholding data, in my view, that is pertinent to the policing of Lancashire. That's what we're here to do. If we don't do it, there's no point us being here. And I think we're seeing with our feet, the paucity of information in this agenda is making us ask that very question. Is it worth bothering turning up to this meeting? I mean, and to be fair, the Commissioner should answer that, not yourself, in my view.
I'm not clear what the question is, Chair.
The question is, Clive, with all due respect, the report has nothing in it. You're saying you can't give us that information because it never used to be given to us. It did used to be given to us. You're saying you can't give us information because it takes a lot of effort to produce it. But the Chief Constable produced all that information just before Christmas. So it obviously is there. So what is the problem, I suppose is the question. What is the problem?
Well, the answer is, as I've indicated before, I think the information should be in part 1. It was coming to us as part 2. I've requested that, as has been indicated. We've now got a police and crime plan where all the performance data relating to the police and crime plan will be worked on with constabulary. That can come forward as part one that you will be able to see. You know, in terms of what has happened before, I can only say when I've come back in to the way the Accountability Board was working and the way that it was being put to me. Because like I've said, I don't think we've got anything to hide or anything that shouldn't be shared with the panel or the public. I requested that change. We are working on the police and crime plan and the performance data to ensure that we can deliver that. So I don't want to get bogged down in kind of terms of what happened prior. I know that when I've come in, that is what I've had to deal with the Accountability Board, and we have put a lot of effort into changing the way that worked, in my belief, to make it more effective so that we can link the police and crime plan to the performance and make sure that what the public are telling us is important is delivered. That will be available then in the Accountability Board and will be available to you. So what has happened before, really, I don't know, but in terms of what will happen in the future, I'm confident that we will get the right information from constabulary. You will see what we have got. You'll be able to see whether we are delivering on the police and crime plan, and that will be available for discussion here.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think the issue has been raised now and possibly can just be developed over time, but if we look back over the last few years' worth of papers and the level of detail that was in them can be sort of compared to the level of detail that's here. So obviously this item is the Police and Crime Commissioner's performance update, and I don't think anyone could dispute that the performance referred to is absolutely fine, there's no issue, but it's the detail behind it that we've previously had more sight of, and if that's being hidden behind part 2 in the Accountability Board, if you could take that as an action back to the constabulary to say how do we get this into part 1, or do we need to go to closed session at this meeting to actually get down into the detail. So, you know, this panel will be happy to work a solution through, but I think members have already raised that it's a level of detail so that we can actually scrutinise, but I don't think there's any sort of criticism of the points you've included in your report. We just want to get down into more detailed about it. So I've got a few speakers. Next on my list was Miranda. Oh, it was Councillor Marinell. Sorry. Got both.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bradley actually probably asked the questions I was going to ask, but he said it was a legacy issue, but I think it's been pointed out numerous times now already that this information came forward over every meeting over the last few years, and I just find it difficult to understand that just because we've got a new commissioner and a new chief constable that the data stop being collected, because that obviously isn't the correct thing. So if the data is still being collected, why can it not be given to this panel? You know, we are here to scrutinise your work with the chief constable, and we can't do that if there's nothing in front of us. If it's an empty agenda, what's the point of us actually coming and sitting here and wasting our time? Thank you, Chair.
I think it was more of a comment, unless you have any response.
Chair, the answer is the same.
Yeah.
The answer is that, I mean, I'm only going to echo what I've just said. You know, we put a lot of effort into changing the way the Accountability Board works to make it more effective so that we can then link in the police and crime plan and the performance data for the police and crime plan, asking constabulary to work with them to make sure that we get that information through to the Accountability Board. I don't know what has happened in the past. I only know that we will have that information. It will be in part 1. You will be able to see that, and then you can have the discussion based on what comes forward.
Thank you. I will sort of park that point. I think we've agreed that we do need to discuss this, and from 12 months ago we've had a change of commissioner, a change of chief con, and a change of chair of this panel. So perhaps we will take it away as an action to make sure that we assess what information was being received previously and what information that panel members wish to have. Miranda?
Just a quickie then, before it's parked. It's the Commissioner's Accountability Board, I think, and with the greatest of respect to colleagues in Constabulary who are marvellous in so many ways, governance is not necessarily always one of them. So whatever you say is in part 1, with advice from your officers, I'd like to think that that would be what was in part 1. And you will remember, Clive, as David does, we've previously had counter-terrorism matters dealt with under part 1, when that was a particular issue for the county. And we had a counter-terrorism subcommittee which dealt with those matters. So it is your panel, and we're looking forward to the information that comes. But I would hesitate to accept some of the information that Constabulary may consider to be part two only, as they tend to be somewhat cautious about what they share. And I'd like to see particularly some information about those HMI items that really we're not doing terribly well on. And I'd like to see what's going to happen about that. And one aside, the Constabulary say this week is their Value Police Staff Week. I've spoken to 1 or 2 members of police staff. Nothing's been mentioned to them that they're being valued. That might be an interesting question to ask when you're chatting with the Chief Constable.
Councillor Maddox, so yeah.
Thank you very much. I also was concerned about the lack of detail. I noticed that it was a performance report and agree with all the members around here, but I eagerly clicked on some links as well. But audit is sort of like one of my specialist interests, tragically. So I clicked on the Joint Independent Audit Committee link, and I see that they last met quite a while ago, and they audited, and then there were still some figures outstanding. And then I thought, well, I wonder when we actually get to see the budget, because I saw last year when took over, there was issues with an underspend of the reserves, a bit of an overspend, and I'd be really interested to see the actual budget and then the audit for this year as well, 24-25. And I guess all us councillors have been setting our budget with a great deal of angst, and I'd be very interested to see that. Additionally, I'd like to know, you say that you've requested that the part 2 be taken into part 1. I'd like to know when you asked, because if it hasn't gone through, if you asked 6 months ago and it hasn't happened, well, that's a performance accountability issue in itself. Whereas if you only asked last week, I can understand. And finally, I don't know how many staff you've got, but I seem to recall 20, have I read that somewhere? Anyway, if you could just confirm how many staff you've actually got working on this data, because I haven't been on this committee before yourself, Commissioner. So I don't understand about legacy, and I don't understand what came before us, but I know that even when I first started, we had data on the 101 calls, and we had data on the police control room, because I remember commenting favourably on how my neighbourhood police had. So it's clearly been there even within the time I've sat on the committee. So I'd be interested to know about the budget so that we can look at that as well. Thank you.
Over to you, Commissioner, but I think obviously one of the key things to note is most of the data will be collated and come from the constabulary itself, won't it? It's merely a case of how we get it to us.
Right, okay, try and take the... in terms of the budget, I mean, when you're asking for details of the budget, we gave the budget at the last police and crime panel. That was the budget meeting. So... a breakdown of the...
No, we don't. We've never provided a detailed breakdown of the budget to the panel, but if that's something the panel wants to see, then that can be arranged. Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of the accountability board and the way that it works, we've reviewed the way the accountability board works, and of course the issue of what's in part 2 and part 1. That is an ongoing process because it's been the change in terms of getting the information earlier than has previously been the case, so that we can then digest it and be able to hold the chief to account more effectively. And part of that process is about making sure that as much of the information as is possible is part 1 rather than part 2. Like I said, In terms of the police and crime plan, it has been about making sure that we are on the same page, the priorities that the public want to see delivered in Lancashire. So we now have a joint kind of working group between ourselves and the constabulary about delivery of the police and crime plan that will be contained within the accountability board, and you will be able to see all of that in the future.
Thank you, Commissioner, but when did you ask for all this information? You said that you've asked, it's not the way you want to work, and I agree it's not the way we want to work. You've asked for the part 2 to come into part 1 when?
I can assure you, Chair, there's nobody, probably, I won't say frustrated, but really want to deliver and provide you with information more than certainly me and my team. It's something that we have been in constant conversations with the constabulary over the last few months. There are things that we're doing. My team are looking at a lot of training around processes. What I can say is, hopefully at the next meeting, you will have a really good information package around performance, covering the performance that you can measure the commissioner. Because I think what we talk about a lot of time is police data, but what we have to look at is the data against the police and crime plan. So we're working with the constabulary. So we've got a meeting with the Deputy Chief Constable next week to go through all that, to work out the suite of information that we are going to present. I said before, this has been a national issue, and Miranda is quite right. In the past, and this has frustrated me, we have presented information in part 1, which they not just Lancashire, but all forces do not want to produce at the moment, which is very frustrating. And it's something that we're pushing back nationally as well. Let's say, from us, it's just literally very frustrating, but bear with us, please, and we are working hard with the force to deliver a suite of information that hopefully will answer all your issues.
Thank you. Well, I think it might help, Chair, if we put our weight behind what they're trying to achieve, don't you? Because if it's clearly a national problem that the data isn't being cleansed or whatever, and we've seen the data before, so unless there's been a huge change in legislation, then I think if we put our weight behind it and urge the accountability board, because you said you'd asked a few months ago, well, that's not good enough, is it, if they haven't produced it? So I suggest we put our weight behind it, because could you just refresh me on how many staff you've actually got working on it, please? Is it 20 that you've got all in all?
2.
Did I get 20 from? Have I added a nought?
As an office, we're probably about 20 or so.
About 20 or so on the Police and Crime Commissioner's office?
In the office, but working at the moment around the accountability board, trying to pull this data together, myself and Richard.
Right.
We're very keen. There's nobody more keen.
Keen but frustrated.
And a lot of the issues is around what they call comparative data with similar forces and national and regional. That's the bit they don't like to share because there's easy comparisons. It's sometimes having to extract just Lancashire data, and they're the issues that we have, and that's what we're working on.
Sure. Well, I understand about benchmarking, but I'd like to say to a resident that said to me, has the crime gone up, Councillor Maddox? Well, I don't know. And that's all I want to know. I don't need to know how Cheshire's doing particularly. Other people might, but somebody said to me, Councillor Maddox, has crime gone up in Lancashire City Council's area? I'd have to say, well, I don't know. So that's what I mean. And, we're paid by our residents, aren't we? So that's why I need to know. So I understand that you're frustrated but keen, but it's really not good enough for my residents. Sorry.
Thank you. We could do another round of speakers on this, but ultimately not to lessen this. The issue is around data. The point has been made forcibly by many panel members. It's been heard by the Commissioner's office. We'll see what comes back for the next meeting. It might be that before the next meet there might be an update briefing that goes around to panel members through the Secretary. Or whatever it might be. Although I would just mention that if this data is readily available, there's systems that they just press a button and it gets printed off. So if the issue then is around comparator, well, maybe we could just compare against 12 months, 24 months, 36 months ago. We could just compare against ourselves, not against, even if that's closed session, even if that's confidential papers, whatever it has to be. Obviously, members do just want to have some data to troll through. It's what we're used to. Some of us enjoy it. So I think the point has been made, so you'll take that away. That's absolutely fine. I've no doubt you will, and we'll hear back on that. Is there any further queries? I'll take Councillor Bradley and then Councillor Marinell, and then any further queries around the update itself and the contents of it, but we'll start with Councillor.
Sorry, this is about the update itself, not that.
No, it's
issue.
fine. Go on.
I'm happy to move on from that issue. Is yours about the same issue? No, another one. Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, at the last meeting you were in London for a meeting with other police and crime commissioners, I think you said. I wonder if there's any update on the discussions there, whether anything was fruitful, any updates on some of the other frustrations that we've had as a police and crime panel that you were picking up with other police and crime commissioners, and also if you had any comments about the recent policing and crime bill and what was in that, or maybe what wasn't in that, anything that was positive or that you would seek to add.
Thank you. I mean, in terms of the discussions, a lot of it has been around ensuring that we have the resources to deliver the service. So there was concerns about the funding for neighbourhood policing, particularly around the continuation of the Op Centurion, the hotspot funding. And we was pleased that we managed to secure that. There was concerns around some of the funding for the violence reduction teams, and we managed to secure that as well. So there was concerns about how that, because they was kind of funded until the end of March, both of those, and there was a bit of a cliff edge that we would have seen a real kind of reduction in visibility for policing. But pleased that we've managed to secure that, managed to, with the uplift going forward, that we anticipate that we will be able to deliver, roughly speaking, around 50 additional police officers and 30 PCSOs within this financial year. So really pleased that progress has been made, because that then is the enabler for us to deliver on the government's priorities and also the priorities that we have within Lancashire. Clearly, policing is going through some significant change, and there is a reform bill that will come forward for reform of policing, and that was part of the discussions. That's at its embryonic stages, so we'll have to wait and see how that comes forward. But within the crime and policing bill that was published this week, there is a huge amount that's contained within that. Like I've indicated earlier, 330 pages long. It could have really been broken up into several different bills. There is lots of good work within that. I mean, I could go through and list some of the key points, but it would take some time. In terms of the important elements of it. And there is a huge amount that would be kind of, broken down, is important to what we can deliver within Lancashire. I think one element that I do think we're already asking for more detail and more support with is the legislation around e-bikes and e-scooters, because there isn't much contained within the bill that will give us the support we need for that, because that is a big concern when I'm going across Lancashire. In terms of police and crime commissioners, it is about the delivery, the focus that we've got collectively, about how we can influence government policy going forward. This is one piece of legislation that I think will be absolutely key to enable us to deliver that. The world has changed for me kind of personally with having a Labour government, because that does open doors that we didn't have previously. and enable myself and other PCCs to have meetings directly with government ministers. And that, like I said, means that the legislation that we have, we can play our part in influencing that. In terms of the key aspects, violence against women and girls, the sexual abuse, neighbourhood policing, antisocial behaviour, there's new powers that are coming out that will make the police able to tackle a number of different areas. But there's so much contained within it that it would take a long time to discuss it. And to be fair, because there is so much in it, that it will take time for us to digest that ourselves and as an office to be able to respond properly. We have gone through it, like I said, and I've got with me a letter that I'm sending to Diana Johnson, the policing minister, on the e-bikes and the e-scooters. On the rest of it, we'll work our way through and see what more can be done. But they're the key points. The key points is the legislation and having the resources to enable us to deliver for the people of Lancashire.
Thank you. Just to follow up then, that was helpful, Clive. Could you possibly, if there is an emerging detail that's put around by other commissioners or collective research and analysis that's being done, share that with the panel? We're going into an election period shortly where I'm sure we'll not all be meeting quite as regularly, but if there is any emerging themes, that'd be really useful to have as a panel. And again, I'm sure you can sift the hundreds of pages into a short, concise document that we can all understand. Because you'll be doing it for yourself, I'm sure.
Yeah, Joe, we're happy to do that. I mean, like I said, there's so much in it. They even give briefing papers on each individual kind of elements of it, and even that was overwhelming. I think, but happy to give the APCC have got to give me a two-pager, which is for most people's use. It gives the headlines. But it's the detail behind every headline that's really important, because the headlines by himself don't really do it justice. So we will go away and we'll put a bit more flesh on the bones and then circulate it, because I do think it will be useful to panel members.
Thanks, Commissioner. Councillor Marno.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a quick one. The next meeting is the 30th of June, which is the AGM, and of course by this peculiar meeting that we have, this panel, I drop off the panel every year in May. So the data that we're hoping to get, I probably won't see in June. So is there any way that I could actually be involved with the agenda in June, even though I won't be part of the panel, hopefully to be brought back onto the panel in June at the AGM? Thank you, Chair.
If any information is shared before the changeover, that will be shared with you. If it isn't and it's in part 2, then it won't be. But you then may be able to see the minutes once you are reappointed and co-opted. So we'll I'll run that through the secretary, can figure out what the constitutional arrangement for that is. But we won't leave you without info. I've got Miranda, and then I'll go to the Vice Chair. Thank you.
I don't want to interrupt the Vice Chair if you want to go first. It's just a question then, really with regard to the bill. There's 2 areas where there's going to be either a restoration or an increase in terms of police powers. One is with regard to that whole shop theft, which we're seeing removal of the downgrading police response to low-value shop theft. And the other is the ability of the police to enter premises where they believe there to be targeted power for the police to enter premises to search for and seize electronically tracked stolen goods. So to get out of the nonsense where I can tell you where my iPhone is, but the cops won't go through the door to retrieve it. Now that's going to present some challenges for the police in terms of training and in terms of activity. So I'd be interested to know what conversations are underway and how the police are preparing in terms of readiness to ramp up that response, particularly as we've seen significant downgrading of some of those theft responses. Not just in Lancashire, nationally.
I was going to say, we don't know yet. We'll work on it. But as the bill has only just been published, we've not had the opportunity to get together to discuss that.
I just want to ask the Commissioner about victim support. Has that been fully appointed and funded? And I was just reading, I think I've got it right, that has the service been divided out between advice for victims of domestic abuse and violence and the remaining issues of crime? Has there been a division within that support service? And why did you feel that was necessary? And is it working? The other thing I would like to mention is about Paul Ed. I think that's a great... Paul Ed, you mentioned it in paragraph 8 of your report. I think that's a great sort of service that it will be available to all our schools in Lancashire. And I think it's important that we get out that this is a service for delivery of presentations for young people at schools as to various issues concerning crimes and how they behave. And that service can be delivered not only by the teachers within the schools, but there's also a package for the police to deliver as well. And the whole thing is tailored on the ages of pupils, isn't it? There's different packages for different ages. So I think that's an important one that we get out to schools because, you know, what we say to young children, I think, is very, very much part and parcel of future life in the county, that people have a basis and grounding as to their behaviours and what effects it has on themselves and other people. But I just want to know about victim services as well.
I mean, two things. I mean, on the POLED, couldn't agree more. The presentation that we had around POLED and how it's being used in schools, I think it is a phenomenal kind of tool for schools to have, and making a difference already in Lancashire. I know that the police are going to schools, use it themselves a great deal to get messages across to young people, and I think it mentions about 217, I think nearly 300 schools in Lancashire have already signed up to POLED, and we are, and that's growing by every week. More schools are signing up to it. In terms of victim services, that's been recommissioned. The victim services with victim support has been recommissioned. And so I don't know, is there any change to the details, Steve, with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, the new commission will be in place from the 1st of April, so it's not started yet. It reflects a process that undertook a needs assessment for victims of crime across Lancashire. There was an extensive consultation programme undertaken in determining the specification for the contracts that were put out to tender, and it was identified that splitting up the provision of services into more specialist services was seen very much as the right direction of travel. So the dividing up of the contract was an attempt to try and reflect the fact that specialist service providers should provide support for victims of domestic abuse, specialist support for victims of sexual violence, and then specialist support for children and young people. And they're the essential divisions of the contract going forward, plus a continuation of a general crime number, which is anything that isn't those specialisms. But the decision to split the service between those was driven by the consultation with a huge number of specialist providers and general providers across Lancashire. It was not simply taken in isolation as a decision. It reflected back what we were being told by the sector, as it were. So we will see how that delivers, because it starts on the 1st of April, and clearly the intention is to determine how well that's performing. Are there any further changes that we can make to try and deliver the best service that we probably can? We're also in discussions with colleagues at Lancashire County Council who also do a lot of work around domestic abuse services for
the 12 districts that they cover, as well as the other upper tier authorities, about how we can work collectively on whatever service we provide for victims, particularly of domestic abuse, because there's an awful lot of partners in that world delivering. So that's why it's split up. You asked, is it working? It's not started working in that way yet, but we'll be monitoring it closely to see how it performs.
Chair, that, you know, I feel I've realised the shortness of this report that we've got, and it would have been nice not only to get some stats about domestic abuse, to know the facts and figures, you know, on all the other antisocial behaviour and other crime figures that we haven't got in this report, and that is a good news story, you know, that we're doing further work for victims. You know, I think it would have been nice to have that in the report with the greatest respect, you know, to flush out and give greater details to the panel on a lot more things, because this is a very thin report. I think I'm not going to belabor the point, but it's obvious that we deserve a bit more information, and it's to your benefit as well, I take. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I was going to make a point about PolEd as well, so no, I don't have to. Can I just refer to one of the decisions that you've made? It's 33/2024, which... Are we not on decisions made yet?
No, still on the performance report.
Oh, okay. I'd move swiftly on, sorry.
We might be shortly. Are there any further questions on the performance update report? Okay, I gather that's for noting, but we've got a few actions that have arisen that will be included in the minutes around how we proceed with information sharing. Okay, that's noted. Item number 6, Police and Crime Commissioner decisions. Councillor Maddox, and followed by Councillor Whip.
Thank you very much. Again, we're on decisions made now. I was looking at the decision that we made on 33/2024, the evaluation of the MARAC model. We've obviously decided to do it on the 7th of January. So can we see it when it's done? And obviously, has it been scoped yet? Where are we at with it? I imagine you scoped it, done sort of desktop study type thing, but could we have a progress report as well, please?
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, the MARAC evaluation was specified, gone out to tender and been awarded. So that decision item has awarded the evaluation to, I can't remember now for the life of me who won it, but I think it was you, Clem. Somebody else has read the report rather than me. There you go, you read it more recently. So you, Clem, will undertake the report and report back.
You know when that's been awarded? Is it recently or was it on the 7th of January when...
It was awarded on the 7th of January. That was the decision to award. Ah,
right. So would you mind reporting some progress back to the panel? Is that okay for you, Chair? If we hear back on progress on that, I think a lot of us would be interested in that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I refer to the budget monitoring position on the 30th September, which is a report that does have some information behind it. I'm grateful for that. What I'd like to ask about is the flawed and failing police communication system, Airwave, and guffaws around the room. Now, unfortunately, I'm long enough in the tooth to remember when Airwave came in and was developed and was supposed to be all singing, all dancing, but it is failing, it's falling over, and I know that the replacement has been disastrously delayed. The development seems to be, one of these huge IT, am I allowed to say cock-ups? I don't think it's rude, is it? It's, sort of when something fails to fire. And the police emergency services are suffering as a consequence of this absolutely abysmal, antique airwave system. So can the Police and Crime Commissioner tell us what's happening with that? What are the prospects of getting this resolved? Is it going to cost Lancashire Constabulary a fortune to actually get something out of this at the end, and how will all this be managed?
Yes, I think we have been around this an awful long time with her wave. I don't think any of us was that supportive at the initial stages, and we've suffered the pain of it over an extensive period of time. This is not something that in Lancashire we've had a lot of say over. This has been driven nationally and will cost Lancashire money, as it will with many other police forces. In terms of where we're up to at the moment, I think Steve might be able to give a better and more detailed response than I can. Steve, do you want to share some pain?
Well, I'll try not to say any more rude words, Councillor Whip, because it could well do. It is a classic example of a nationally driven IT programme that's gone completely wrong. The proposed solution that was first come up with ended up with discussions at the Monopolies and Mergers Commission and all of those sort of august bodies, because Motorola were the ones who were going to do it, and they bought Airwave and then basically owned the old system and the new system, so could name the price, and nationally there was problems with dealing with how much that was going to cost. And then the solution, which was a mobile phone will be able to do everything, was quickly proved that it couldn't. So the original plan was you lose the radio system and the radio and just have a mobile phone, but it couldn't do what the radio system did. Great. You look at, I didn't do this, by the way. It wasn't me. They're working their way back round another solution which would appear to say you are going to need radio handsets and a radio system, because mobile technology can't quite do what they need it to say it to do, and all of this is racking up bills. I think where the real pressure has come, and it's come from Chief Constables, but particularly from the APCC on behalf of Police and Crime Commissioners, is, well, what is and where is the governance on this at the national level? It sat squarely with that in the Home Office and was scrutinised scantily, I would say, within that department, within government. I think the APCC in the last few years have really, really pressed hard to say these national IT programmes, and Airwave isn't the replacement, isn't the only national IT programme that's running quite slow and costing a lot within policing. And then you look across the public sector and it does get eye-watering. And the pressure is being put on to say we need to have, as a sector, more say and more sight on how this programme is supposedly being delivered, because at the moment that central government scrutiny doesn't seem to be sufficient to drive this sort of programme forward. And it's a rubbish answer, Councillor Whip, and I apologise, but that's where we are at, because nationally that's where that programme is at. And is there a big bill coming? Yes. I do remember that we were going to be one of the first ones to go live, and that was 7 years ago, when we're still waiting. Absolutely crackers. And when you multiply that up across all of the major IT programmes that the government are in charge of, and you'll all have touched upon them in your own areas of work, it is disgraceful, to be quite frank.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm flabbergasted that this is the position. It's utterly unacceptable that police officers are sent out on duty and they have unreliable and failing technology that puts them at risk and means that the public are not getting the service that they should. What is the Police and Crime Commissioner doing with his colleagues to actually force the hand of the Home Office to ensure that police officers and other emergency workers aren't left in the lurch because of these failures?
Chair, as has just been indicated, this is something that has been around a long time, nationally driven. We have been raising the concerns as has been indicated here, putting the pressure on the Home Office as much as we can. It is something that is not within our gift. We can only express the concerns as you're expressing them and putting as much pressure on as we can. With a new government now, hopefully that things will change, but this is something that has been around for an awful long time. I don't know if you want to add anything more.
The airwave system isn't failing. The airwave radio system isn't failing. It still works efficiently. The driver for the project was somebody decided that it could be done more efficiently by only having one piece of equipment rather than two. So, I mean, I don't want the panel to think that any police officer is being put at risk by the delay to the programme, because they're not. The airwave system works and continues to work. And, I mean, as a bean counter, which I am, and I make no bones about that, money is being invested in a system that in theory should be going, but they're investing in that system to make sure it continues to work and provide protection to emergency workers. So it is costing money. Quite rightly, it should cost money, but nobody's being put at risk by the programme. All it's doing is costing a hell of a lot of money and not getting very far very quickly. But people are not being put at risk.
Thanks for that assurance about the risk. That is important, and I think it's another area where this panel is in agreement with the Commissioner's Office that, you know, similar to wanting more funding from government, we will back you in any way we can on this one. Miranda?
Yes, on a completely different subject, decision 27/2024, which is the community fund. Bearing in mind we don't meet again till June, it would be great to know, Commissioner, whether you are thinking of doing that again this year, because there are a number of groups that would be really keen to apply. I know it was very well received and the panel was appreciative of it.
Yes, Chair. The answer is yes, we are. We haven't yet met to agree the terms of the new grants that will be available, but I don't expect them to be that dissimilar to what we've done in the past. So the community fund grants that are distributed through the proceeds of crime funding that we have. What I will do is, as soon as we have agreed the window, as soon as that's kind of open, I will make sure that members of the Police and Crime Panel are circulated with the details of the grant scheme, so that if they know of any organisations that are interested in bidding for that funding, then at least you'll be made aware of that.
Any further queries on the decision report? No? Our members happy to note that. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 8, which is the task and finish groups. Are there any updates from any current running task and finish groups? No. I believe we're
still working.
Sorry.
Miranda and myself are going to be meeting up to hopefully finalise the rural crime task and finish group. It's business as usual, a little bit slower than I would have thought, for which I hold my hand up, but we're looking hopefully to have it ready before the next meeting, hopefully.
Great, well, thank you for putting in the work. And just an update that we will be progressing towards a retail crime working group, and we will update all members if anyone still wants to join onto that at the appropriate point. At the moment, I think it's myself, the Vice Chair, and yourself. Okay. Item number 9, which is complaints update. I'll pass over to the Secretary for this.
Thank you, Chair. We did receive a purported complaint, which I'm still considering, and I believe some members of the panel might have received correspondence from the complainant. two sort of quite sort of long pieces of correspondence. I need to I've received some further correspondence of the person as well, which I'm currently sort of trying to sort of work out and to understand if this is a complaint under the regulations, and if so, then I will sort of invoke the usual process. But at the moment now, I'm still trying to sort of work out whether this is an actual complaint. Thank you.
Okay, members happy with that? Just identifying whether the complaint is suitable to come to this body or whether it goes to a different body, or what the process is.
Yeah, so if it's anything of a criminal nature, then I'll pass to the IOPC. If it's of a conduct issue, then the process will be that I'll do a sort of a shifting process and then maybe set up the subcommittee.
Through you, Chair, are we supposed to answer the emails when we get them? Now.
Yeah. Sorry, if I've already said yeah. Please do not answer any of those.
Still don't.
Oh,
Right.
Thank you.
Item number 10, urgent business. I have no items of urgent business, and none from the Secretary. Okay. And then item number 11 is date of future meetings. So we've got the AGM scheduled for 10 a.m. on 30th of June, and hopefully we will see most of you there, pending the outcome of your AGMs and Councillor Marinell in attendance. I'll close the meeting at this point, but members may wish to stay behind to have a chat. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.